Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the wild, multifaceted life of Arnold Schwarzenegger. We're talking about a guy who didn't just, succeed in one career. He literally conquered three totally distinct domains: professional athletics, Hollywood, and American politics. It's an absolute masterclass in sheer willpower and calculated transformation.
Okay, let's dive right into this number. 5.4 billion. That is his staggering worldwide box office revenue in dollars. Just let that scale sink in for a second. It's a massive figure that really establishes the scale of his success. It reminds us that way before he ever stepped into politics, and long after his bodybuilding prime, he was arguably the biggest, most bankable movie star on the planet.
So here's the roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll be quickly moving through: forging the Austrian oak, becoming the action icon, the governor of California, building a business empire, and finally, triumphs, trials, and legacy. We're framing his life not just as a standard biography, but as a masterclass in the absolute mechanics of relentless ambition and constant reinvention.
Kicking things off with Section 1, Forging the Austrian Oak. Let's look at how a super strict upbringing led him to escape straight into the world of iron and weights.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the milestones pile up incredibly fast. In 1968, at just 21 years old and speaking very little English, he makes the huge move to the United States. By 1970, at age 23, he wins his first Mr. Olympia title. And get this, that is a record for the youngest winner that literally still stands today. Then in 1977, he crosses completely into the mainstream, publishing his massively successful autobiography and training guide, The Education of a Bodybuilder.
He famously became known as the Austrian Oak. And honestly, it's a perfectly fitting title for a guy standing 6'2" and weighing in at 235 pounds of pure muscle. He won an unprecedented 7 Mr. Olympia titles, completely revolutionizing the sport. His dedication was so intense that as a teenager, he'd actually break into local gyms on the weekends just to train when they were locked up. No way was he missing a workout. He basically treated his physical form like his very first startup business, the absolute foundation for the empire he was about to build.
Moving on to Section 2, Becoming the Action Icon. I mean, what do you even do if you achieve your ultimate life goal at 23? Well, if you're Arnold, you simply pivot and set your sights on dominating Hollywood.
Listen to Arnold's own memory of those early Hollywood days. He said, "I was told by agents and casting people that my body was too weird, that I had a funny accent, and that my name was too long. Hollywood wanted standard leading men, right? They frankly had no idea what to do with a giant Austrian with a gap tooth. Yet, defying all conventional wisdom, he would soon turn those exact so-called flaws into the very things that made him the highest-paid action star on Earth."
He didn't try to change who he was. He strategically leveraged those unique physical traits to his absolute advantage. The first big step? His breakthrough as the literal embodiment of a fantasy hero in 1982's Conan the Barbarian. Step 2, becoming an undeniable sci-fi icon by playing an emotionless, unstoppable cyborg in 1984's The Terminator. And Step 3, a brilliant comedic crossover alongside Danny DeVito in 1988's Twins. He proved to studios he could do it all. In fact, he took zero salary for Twins just to prove his comedic chops, and he ended up making tens of millions from the back-end profits, a total game changer.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Governor of California. Welcome to his third massive act of reinvention.
Now, you might be wondering, why run as a Republican in a state so heavily known for leaning Democratic? Well, let's ground his political identity in his own words. He recalled, "I heard Nixon speak. He was talking about free enterprise. I said, then I am a Republican." Having immigrated from an Austria that he felt was stifled by socialism, his alignment with the Republican Party was deeply shaped by this core belief in free enterprise, individualism, and basically getting the government out of the way.
And this brilliantly illustrates his highly nuanced, moderate political platform that frequently defied traditional party lines. Fiscally, he governed as a conservative, doing things like repealing unpopular vehicle registration fee increases and vetoing single-payer healthcare bills. Yet socially and environmentally, he leaned much more progressive. He described himself as pro-choice and actively worked to cap greenhouse gas emissions in his state. His political achievements were definitely substantial. I mean, he won the absolutely chaotic 2003 recall election with nearly 49% of the vote in a massively crowded field. Then he secured re-election in 2006 with an even stronger 56%. During his time in office, he pioneered aggressive environmental legislation, signing the Global Warming Solutions Act, and he really championed the California Hydrogen Highway. He was pushing hard to build renewable energy infrastructure way before it was the norm.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Building a Business Empire. We're going to look at the very surprising financial backbone of his entire career. Now, you might think his wealth came entirely from Hollywood, right? Actually, scratch that. Arnold was already a self-made millionaire by the age of 25. Back in 1968, he and fellow bodybuilder Franco Colombo started a bricklaying business. They brilliantly marketed their European muscle to capitalize on the post-earthquake rebuilding boom in San Fernando. He took those profits, rolled them into a mail-order fitness business, and bought a $10,000 apartment building that sparked a massive real estate empire. Later on, he even held significant equity in global finance firms like Dimensional Fund Advisors. This financial independence was literally his secret weapon. It meant he was never desperate. He could just say no to bad movie roles and wait for the absolute perfect breakthrough. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Triumphs, Trials, and Legacy. Because naturally, a life of this sheer magnitude and ambition inevitably comes with some pretty profound challenges. His path has certainly seen its share of highly publicized controversies. In 2010, his very last day in office included the controversial sentence commutation of Esteban Núñez, a political ally's son. This drew intense criticism and a lawsuit from the victim's family. Then in 2011, his 25-year marriage to Maria Shriver ended after the revelation that he had fathered a son with a longtime household employee. That separation led to a divorce that was officially finalized a decade later, in 2021. Alongside those public trials, he's also faced major, life-threatening health battles. Being born with a congenital heart defect, specifically a bicuspid aortic valve, Arnold has had to show immense physical resilience off the movie screen too. This condition has required multiple open-heart surgeries to replace degrading valves, with major operations happening in 1997, 2018, and again in 2020. It really offers a stark contrast, doesn't it? The invincible cinematic hero versus very real-life human vulnerability. So the crucial point is how he has chosen to define his latest chapter as a sort of global elder statesman. He founded the R20 Regions of Climate Action and hosts the annual Austrian World Summit to tackle global warming head-on. He's also actively promoting an 80% plant-based diet for both health and environmental reasons. And, drawing heavily on the dark history of his native, post-war Austria, he's leveraged his massive platform to become a highly outspoken critic of hate groups, prejudice, and white supremacy.
Which leaves us with a final, massive question to consider. Is Arnold Schwarzenegger's story the ultimate blueprint for the American dream, or is it just a totally unrepeatable phenomenon? Can this kind of relentless ambition and calculated reinvention really be replicated by anyone else, or is the Austrian oak simply one of a kind? Think about that as you reflect on his incredibly unprecedented path. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.